We've got a lot to unpack today, from rumored rosters to starting lineup swaps. We've also happened to have a special guest joining us in studio today. It's time for Off the Break. Hello, it's Off the Break. I'm LandO Sanders, and welcome inside the Frontier Communications studio in Dallas, Texas. We want to say a massive thank you to everybody for showing support on our inaugural episode. And whether you're watching us live or are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you may be joining us, a massive thank you to you as well for tuning in. Without further ado, he's a multiple-time champion Call of Duty veteran, coach and GM for the Dallas Empire. Make way for the legendary Ramboray. Ray, it's great to have you in studio. How you doing?
I'm pretty good, man. It's great to be here.
It's great. Well, I'm happy to have you here, man. Talk to me. I know it's been, just over 2 weeks. You're still in the process of getting settled in here in Dallas, but how has the transfer been of being back on an eSports team? Did it take some time to transfer back?
It's actually been a lot easier than I thought it would be.
Is that right?
It kind of comes instinctively to me, this whole scene and how things work, and just the game itself as well, because I was kind of seeing it from a different perspective with my old job being in game development. So kind of coming back to the competitive side where you look for the exploits and best ways to play the game and whatnot.
Right.
I thought it would take me maybe shake a little rust off. I'd say it took me a few days to kind of really get a grasp of what's going on. And then from that point, it's kind of fine tuning my knowledge and really kind of coming back to my roots of like understanding the games at the level I did before. So no, honestly, it's been pretty cool, and everything's been going good so far.
That's great to hear. Now, talk to me a little bit about your timeline a little bit. Let's kind of rewind the clock back a little. You retire back in Ghost 2014, not long right after the second place finish at COD Champs under Envy. What exactly took place from that moment to where we are now?
Yeah, I'm an old man. I'm 31 now. I'm like a grandpa in this community. So yeah, I joined Envy about a year before the Ghost Champs. So we played Black Ops 2 Champs, we got second there, and we played Ghost Champs, we got second there. Some stuff happened behind the scenes with the team. Ended up me getting dropped from the team. At that point in time, it's been the second time I was dropped in like the span of like 5 months. So I was like, okay, well, I was 25 at the time, and like I was 3 or 4 years older than everyone else, and this is a job to me, right? So like I'm living in the States under a visa, and I have all these kind of commitments to this organization. So joining another team didn't really seem like a good feat for me. So I got approached by Jay Perrier, who shout out to him, great guy for community Call of Duty in the world. He actually contacted me and told me, hey, there's this new studio that's trying to make Call of Duty games, and they might be interested in having you. I'm like, okay, well, let's check it out. I kind of, long story short, I did like an internship with them for 4 months, ended up turning into a job, and I was at Sledgehammer Games for 5.5 years, creating games. And that was an awesome experience, no doubt. When I heard about the CDL League, I can't lie, I got really interested. I still enjoyed doing what I did at Sledgehammer, and then I have nothing bad to say about what I did there. What they do there is great. Everyone out there is pretty cool. But when the CDL kind of popped up again, I was like, oh, look, this is kind of big now, right? Like the franchising and everything like that is getting to a level where I have a chance to kind of come back and make something out of this in the long run. I always saw myself kind of coming back in esports at some point in my life. I just didn't really know when it was. So when I saw the opportunity and I started talking to Hastro, it was like, oh yeah, this might work out. It took a while with visa stuff because I'm Canadian. I grew up, like literally, I was born in nowhere outside the border, and I have to go through all these pains and troubles. But yeah, no, it was cool. Everything's turned out great so far, and I've been working, like you said, I've been working the team for a few weeks now, and got my first event under my wings. And
yeah, absolutely.
Everything's going pretty good so far.
Well, that's good to hear. Now, talk to me a little bit when you get the call from Stro, right? You guys start having those conversations. Was there any hesitation at all to kind of join this team, the roster that this particular group has to be the role that you're in? Was there any hesitation at all that thought, maybe this isn't the right move, or?
No, not really. It took a while to kind of like commit to something. We had to go back and forth with like different ideas on roles for myself and like where would I come in and be able to help the team the most possible. Yeah. And we kind of settled in on head coach for the most of it. I have a good way of discussing things with players. I've done it in the past, and let's say in a more aggressive way when I competed. I've learned a lot behind the scenes and the Sledgehammer Games, and just kind of like more about management and like understanding how you really have a kind of a work environment with people and making it to where it's positive, like trying to find a way to make the negative things a positive thing and make players feel like they're learning and making sure they understand in ways that doesn't really tick them off, right? Because everyone's really kind of fragile, for lack of a better term, in the esports world. Nobody likes being told that they're doing something really that bad or so on and so forth. So I've learned a lot to try and mold that and incorporate that into my ways of teaching and whatnot and helping players out. So it's definitely turned to fruition. I feel like I have a hard time making people mad now, which is cool. Like it's a really kind of a good element to have, I think, for a coach and for anyone that works with players.
Now, franchising was obviously announced a while back, and as someone who has been in the community, since the beginning, I know you already talked about it being like the grandfather, if you will, of Call of Duty. What were your initial thoughts on Call of Duty making that step? Were there any kind of worries that you had with the franchising now being kind of in play?
Not really, dude. I was jealous. I was like, where was this when I played? Like, I mean, if we go back like 10 years from now, that's when I started competing with a bunch of the OGs. I mean, Clay and Crim been around for that long. I never really got to kind of get my piece of the pie, so to say, on the playing front. But no, I don't. I think it has a big potential to kind of come to fruition. It's just a matter of we need to see games get on a level where esports doesn't feel as different as the casual experience, and that's always been the issue for Call of Duty in my book, from a kind of even from a dev standpoint to a playing standpoint, is that if a random Joe 514 shops on the game and then he's like, oh, these pros not using claymores or not using grenade launchers, I use all that stuff. What is this? What am I watching?
Right.
And that's the biggest kind of fight we have, and I think it's going to be the biggest kind of hump the CDL has to find a way to kind of come around, is a way for people that just kind of start watching, for them to kind of assess and understand and relate to the players that they're watching. Because I mean, just like the KD from standpoint, right? Like Scumpy got an amazing KD. He went 1.3 this event, and you're like, 1.3? I can get like 5.4 in a pub. I'm like, I'm much better than this guy.
Yeah.
And we've been dealing with those issues ever since I played. So it's just a matter of like, I don't know how exactly the CDL is going to take on in that fight. But we still have a really good kind of core community, and the viewership's been pretty good so far this year. The franchises definitely help the players and understanding like the competition has never been this strong. And I can tell you that even from like just watching for the whatever month I've been here and involved with, like even the past years, I was still keeping up with everything. And there's never been this much competition because of the fact that all the good players are on 12 teams now.
Yeah.
And we'll have to see how that expands and whatever player count changes next year and so on and so forth. But we're also seeing a great kind of a young player kind of coming up as well. So that's kind of making the veterans really have to work, because if they want to keep their job, they have to keep working. And a lot of these guys haven't really set up themselves to do other things. So it's like, this is their gig, right? They have to make this work. I think CDL is all good, dude. I'm excited for how long it's gonna. I mean, hopefully it lasts forever. But it has very kind of a strong potential line, and the people at the helm like Joanna and all the people that are working Casey, like those people know what they're doing. Like they know what they're talking about. They've been through it with different environments that are similar to this, so it's exciting.
Now, I feel like you got kind of thrown into a very unique position, right? Because the season's kind of already in full swing, and now you're kind of at the line to step into more of like an authoritative role. Day one, you walk into the Dallas Empire training room. Was there anything specific that you wanted to get across to the team?
Not really. I kind of understood my position from the get-go. I didn't really talk to anyone about it, but I had my own mindset on like, I'm not coming here to wreck stuff. This team's already very strong. They're a very skilled individual. I just wanted to come and find my place in the way where I can help without really changing what's been going on. Crim and Clay have been doing a great job of like teaching the younger guys about all the things. Granted, sometimes not communicating the best way, and that's kind of where I'm going to come in, hopefully, and then help kind of drive that in a positive way. But for the most part, they've been very helpful and also very positive. And it's really positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement in their head. Like if they do something really good, they're always kind of hyping them up, especially in LA at the event. Like it's hard to explain in words how great that kind of communication line was between the team, just on an emotional front and just kind of keeping the vibes. I'll just use the young.
There you go.
But yeah, no, it was exciting to watch, and again, like my involvement has not been to where I wanted to be yet. But for the most part, I feel like I'm helping with bits and pieces, which is all I want to do right now, because I don't want to mess anything up until there really seems to be a need for it.
Sure.
But right now everything's rolling pretty good. The workflow we have seems to be working, and yeah, the team's feeling good. Team's strong.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, how has it been kind of working with the young gun specifically? Because I know a lot of people kind of already put Hook in that conversation. Hook's been around for a long time, but more specifically, Shotz and Illy, both 18, both competing in their first real competitive season. What advice have you given to them, considering it is their rookie year? Has there been any moments where, a conversation has come up where you've given those guys advice, considering how young they are?
I'm trying to think. I don't think we've had like a specific conversation about just like coming up. Like, I mean, Illy's been competing online for what, like 4 or 5 years?
Sure,
like,
yeah.
Shotz is a world champion Halo. Like, people are giving him a lot of flack on that front of like the experience level and understanding of like Call of Duty, and some of that is on us, but for the most part, those players just came in like ready and hungry. You can tell when they practice and their regimen of how they handle scrims and games in general. Like they love playing and they love competing, and it shows when they play. Granted, there's been like some adjustments we made to kind of, like Shotzi specifically had a rough start to the year. Last event, I think he probably played the best, if not with Clayser. Like they both had an incredible event.
Right.
And the team in general was just on point. Like our communication levels, our understanding of what we needed to accomplish on the maps. It was all great. But like we made a small role change that kind of put Hugh on a different role and took some weight off Shotzi's understanding. Like it's almost like Shotzi had to kind of know the game at a level that he wasn't there yet. Yeah. And the role change kind of alleviated some of that and just kind of let his raw skill kind of come to fruition and just let him get kills, which he's obviously really good at. Yeah. So just small things like that is really kind of what we've been doing to try and make things work.
Right. I know that particular role change was like a big deal for a lot of the community. Everyone kind of realized that over time. I think there was an interview that was done like mid-event and people were already talking about like, oh, okay, they did do the role change. That had been something that was kind of rumored for a little bit now. Where exactly did that kind of idea stem from? Was that something that Shotzi had kind of brought up? Was that something that the roster, Crim6, Clayster, maybe even yourself kind of brought up and said, hey, this needs an adjustment? Or was it something that just came out of nowhere?
So far, it's been mostly team decisions, right? Like I think that's one thing that we're doing really well is everyone's kind of picking in the pot and like, hey, throwing ideas out and like trying to figure out. And we try things. Like we're not scared in scrims if we need to test something out, to feel it out and see how it goes for us. And from my understanding, that's how it happened. Yep. The decision might have been discussed before I came on. And it kind of happened, I think, a week after I started, which I was dealing with moving and whatnot.
Right.
But obviously, it was the right decision given the recent success. But no, it's just we really seem to be a team, right? Like that to me, that's the most important thing. As long as we're all connected in a way where nobody really hates working with each other, and like there's been a saying in the past is like make your teammates your friends and not your friends your teammates. Right. There needs to be like a fine line in the middle of that's reached, and so far I feel like we've been there. Like I wouldn't say like all 5 of our players would go out and like spend the rest of their lives together, but at the same time, like they can handle each other and
there's that mix. Yeah.
They enjoy kind of being around each other and talking. Sure. And especially in the work environment, everything's pretty solid right now. So it's a matter of like seeing how all this transfers online and see how the rest of the year goes, and if we can keep that kind of mindset going, because it's much more difficult when you're not in person doing it nonstop.
Now I know coming into LA, there was a little bit of pressure, I think it's fair to say, on at least internally when it comes from like a media standpoint. There was a little bit of pressure on the shoulders of obviously Shotzi, obviously Illy as well, for the team now in this kind of environment to possibly walk home with a championship, considering the fact that Atlanta gets knocked out. But from your perspective, obviously being on that main stage, you guys come away with the victory. Was there any difference from being on that main stage and pretty much being told you're a champion from a player standpoint now to a coach's standpoint? Is there any difference there?
I mean, sure, you're not the one playing, right? Yeah. It definitely felt a little different, but I was as excited as I would have been, if not more. Mm-hmm. It's kind of incredible how watching is 10 times more stressful than playing. I never really understood that. I knew this job would require a little more stress handling on the front of, because you're dealing with people that are at a closer level, and the kind of the need to show results obviously is something that's very kind of a live thing in esports, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, like Game for Stro, or like no matter who's involved. So no, it was kind of incredible being part of that and kind of seeing the excitement. And I mean, I probably screamed the loudest when we had the little huddle at the end.
Sure.
My voice was shot for a day because I just never haven't screamed like that in years.
Yeah.
But no, it was super exciting. I wouldn't say it felt any different. And again, like it felt like the team was one, and the excitement level on everyone. Like Hugh hasn't won. I guess he hasn't won a championship probably before that point, which I learned after. Mm-hmm. He's been second 7 times, something like that. Yep. I can relate to that. I've been second a couple of times in my life.
We'll not bring up any of those unfortunate moments right now. Okay. Maybe another interview for another time. Sure. But talk to me a little bit, right? I know you're both a coach and a GM here for the Dallas Empire. I know there are a lot of people who are out there who want to know what kind of is the day-to-day for Ramboray, right? What exactly kind of goes into the day-to-day operation of being a coach and being a GM?
So far it's been mainly coach. The GM stuff I still have to sit down and talk to Shro about and figure out what that really is going to mean in the long run. But yeah, very much right now it's just kind of just standing with the players in scrims, listening to what they're going on, throwing my bits and pieces of what I see because I get the different perspective watching the mini map while they compete, while they practice. So just kind of putting my 2 cents on like, hey, look, I saw this happen. Just opening a conversation. Like that's one thing I learned from my work behind the scenes is that it's not always about kind of telling people what you think. It's about trying to let them figure out what they see based on what you see, right? So it's like, oh, I saw this happen on the map. I'm like, what if this happened? What if he treated the situation differently? And then they can discuss it and they figure out if that's something they're willing to try or not. And I feel like that's kind of the best way I've handled things so far is more opening conversation themselves, just so they make sure that they're always trying to learn, always putting themselves in a situation that they're open-minded and really kind of trying to grasp the things that they don't understand about the game yet. And we're still at a stage, we're getting close. I'd say we're like 2 months out of getting to a point where like the meta kind of holds a point and then it's about countering that meta.
Right.
But as it stands right now, everyone's still kind of in a learning mode for the most part and trying to fine tune what they know already and try and grow it at, like you have a level of strategy that most people understand and then you're trying to just get a little above. And that's kind of how it works for the most part until I'd say 2 months from now. So we're still at a stage where we're trying to understand everything. And once we do, it'll be fun.
Now, I know one thing in particular that people started to kind of bring up whenever you were added to this team is how you're going to work with the veterans, right? It's been called previously as Rambo's way of doing things. I know you already kind of talked about it a little bit, but do you think you have a specific way of doing things? And if so, how do you think you kind of mix that in with veterans of the likes of Crimsix and Clayster who have been around for a long time?
Yeah, it's interesting. And again, like coming from I mean, most people, like I listen to a few podcasts, people are talking about how that's like, yeah, very much so. I will be the first one to say back in the day, I wasn't the most fun player to team with. I got stuff done, but on the front of like really being a fun person to play with, I definitely wasn't that. Some people could handle it, some people can't, and you can tell by the teams that have worked and the teams that haven't worked that I was on. It's interesting because I don't feel like it almost feels like my level of involvement so far has been equal to Crim and Clay's as far as like the team in general. I don't come in and try and be the voice above, and I feel like that's for now at least, and possibly forever. It might be the wrong way to handle it. It really feels, again, it's like a team environment thing. I'm really kind of upfront on that, and everything I suggest, I'm never kind of being pushy on things. If I'm being pushy on certain things, it's because I know I'm like 100% like this is something that I've seen happen multiple times in scrims, and it's not really both based on my knowledge. It's more based on what I'm seeing. That I'm like, hey, look, we've made this mistake 4 times now. Let's try this, please, and let's try and make this work. Again, please, not just do it right, or you're not. It's my way or the highway. Like, no, we don't do that anymore. But yeah, no, it's kind of crazy to see, even just for myself, like from a perspective of how I used to handle things and how I do now. Like I can feel it, I can see it, and there's like the little voice inside, is like, just tell him what to do. Just be that guy again. Yeah. But at the same time, like, yeah, no, nothing's good to come out of that. So yeah, it's been interesting to say the least.
Now, there's been a big curveball, obviously kind of thrown into the mix now with COVID-19, not just affecting esports, but pretty much affecting the entire world. Where were you when you found out the league was going to pretty much solely exist online for the future?
I think I moved. I'm pretty sure that was last week. I think I was already here. It definitely struck me as our team is notoriously good online for some reason. I don't know if it's because we're just central or just the element of we have that play style that just works in that environment. Like for those who don't understand what the differences are, the latency, there's never a perfect world in online play, right? There's always going to be some element of someone having a small advantage or a big advantage. And there's nothing you can really do to stop that. That's just the way it works. So the mentality and how you play online, technically knowledge front and like how you handle the maps and situation and position shouldn't be that different. But when there's like the thing called cameraing, and the slide cancel. A lot of our players like using that. So it definitely shows when we play online and we play a little more aggressive on certain situations than we probably should have, and it ends up working out more so than it would on LAN. So there's some representation. Like I think our team picture is like the little modem.
The router, or whatever,
I thought that was funny. I laughed a lot when I saw that. But it's definitely interesting to see how it's going to mold into us. It seems like we have a small advantage, at least on a mental front. Like the mind games are just already on our side because everyone sees us as like this online juggernaut. Yeah. And it's great that we won LA because that takes a little bit of like the asterisk of whatever may come out of the picture. But yeah, no, it's kind of crazy to see what's going to come from it because to me it's scary in the front of like it opens up different avenues because you can create more content. You can have more games technically because you don't have to make people travel nonstop.
Sure.
The league format may change a little bit. I have no idea yet. They haven't really announced anything on that, and how many games we play also may change. But it's just going to be interesting to see what the competitive integrity of what everything is going to kind of be handled, because there's teams across the country, right? Like, and I mean, I'm pretty sure the teams that are in Europe are actually living here.
Yeah.
So at least that won't be too bad, because if they were like flying London to LA or something like that,
that'd be rough. Yeah.
That'd be really bad.
Now, I know kind of from your perspective, obviously being the coach, as you kind of labeled it more than the GM, at least as of right now, is worry the right word to kind of explain maybe the transition from being on LAN to online? Is that something that you're worried about? Is that the right word to use, you think?
I don't say I'm worried about it. I think the one thing you gain from playing on LAN is the mentality of like your life, how you handled your life, right? Because we're gamers, and I think anyone who watches this can attest to being a gamer. And there's always a point in your life where you go to bed at 3 a.m. and wake up at 12 or 2, and then like the scrim schedule, what we have is basically we play like from the afternoon to early evening. And if players aren't like doing what's right for their bodies and their minds, then they come into scrims and they're not into it, or they're not patient, and they're angry and whatnot. Like there's and like we haven't really experienced that much of it yet. And to me, that's the scariest part, is like you have the home feel, and the home feel is good in some ways for some players because they love playing in that environment because they're used to playing in that environment. But for other players, it's kind of lackluster, and it hurts in just how in general they handle their normal day to day. So that's going to be, to me, that's the hardest thing to handle. Is like I'm not going to sit there and tell people how to live their lives. I'm going to suggest they take care of their bodies and take care of their minds and do what's right and eat at regular times and go to sleep at regular times. But I can't force that, right? Like I'm not someone's parent here. Like I'm very much just trying to be the best coworker I can be. So like as a whole, I think that a lot of issues and a lot of the teams and their issues are going to be around that. Not necessarily around the practice regimen and how you play. I mean, like most of the time we spend online anyways, we just travel to an event every month or 2 months or whatever to play and compete. The competitive aspect, it won't be much different, again, besides what we just discussed about the differences in online to LAN.
Sure.
And it's just the mindset, like really just like how you prepare for an event. Because when you're there, it's just, there's a different sensation. And most people who've been to live events can attest to this. Like when you see it in person compared to on the TV, there's always a difference. It's kind of like, I'd say the differences are a little similar when you talk about online to LAN. I show up to an event, like my brain and my mind is set in a state where like, this is it. Like these are the moments that I live for. And just that feeling of playing in person and seeing the stage and seeing the fans, like all that is not going to be the case now. So like, I'm sure the level of seriousness, at least on our team, won't be a problem, but just from a front of like the way you feel when you compete and that kind of extra motivation that you have and pressure moment. Some people handle that pressure really well. And normally the teams that win are the teams that can handle the pressure the most because the skill gap isn't that big anymore. Yeah. But yeah, I'd say that's what I'm most worried about. It's just what online means to like players' lives and mindset is really, we'll see how it affects. I think it's going to affect every team differently. Some teams are going to thrive in it, and some teams are going to see it. It's going to be like, what happened? Like we were just destroying, now we're done destroying everyone. And it's crazy because there's going to be the blame of like, oh, we're just not good online.
Exactly, yeah.
Sadly, and I hope that there's not much of that because it's just everyone needs to accept this, and this is what's going to be for whatever amount of time this virus goes around, and it's an unfortunate circumstance that no one can control. So it's just kind of what it is. Now
tell me, last question, Ramboray in Modern Warfare, that play style, how do you think that would transfer right now given the lead? Do you think that there is a play style if we're back in the heyday? Does Ramboray transfer well to Modern Warfare, given the play style, given the objective, the smart mindset?
So it's kind of funny. I kind of, through the years of watching what was going on, I was like evaluating if you think I'd be good at this game? And I was kind of telling myself that. I was like, I can tell you right now that the boost games would have not been my thing. Oh boy, I would have got smashed. Like, I'm a very much a position warfare kind of guy. Like if the game feels like chess, I'm going to be up there. I'll be fine. Like I can handle myself. I've never been the shooting guy, the skill guy. Like I've had my games where like on a skill level I was up there, but from a knowledge front, that was always my advantage. So yeah, Modern Warfare is a game that'd be right in my alley.
All right.
Granted, some of the mechanics are very kind of aggressive, and I'm learning myself. Like I'm playing at home, playing Warzone. Warzone's awesome, by the way. So yeah, it's. I think I'd be fine. I think I'd be able to be on a pro team on this game if I had the must to kind of compete, but. But no, I just enjoy being part of it right now, to be honest. It's really cool being with the team and seeing how we can. It's always been about like one of my favorite things about esports and Call of Duty in general has always been about improving. Like I'll be honest, like from an early standpoint, I'd say I enjoyed public matches in Call of Duty for maybe a year or two, And then it was all about the competitive grind. Like just we'd play 8s by 8-10s or whatever.
Sure.
The mix up the pickup games, if for someone that's not really understanding the term. And it was always about kind of learning. I want to know what everything is and be able to push it to my team. And then like that, the progress of getting to a point where you're just the best team and you're the most prepared team was like kind of what was it for me. So coaching in that sense is like a perfect role because I just don't have to move my thumbs around and I can do the same thing and try and help the teammates in the best way possible to kind of elevate their game to a point where they're just unbeatable. Because on the skill front, I'd say we're up there. Like I think there's maybe 2 teams in the league that can kind of relate to us on the skill front. But knowledge front is obviously a big determining factor of how you can implement skill into a game. So yeah, I'd say we're pretty close to there, and I'm excited to see what it comes out when. I'll be vocal about the point where like, all right, guys, we reached that point. I'll be vocal in interviews and whatever you guys want. Like I'm going to talk about it, and we'll see what happens after.
I look forward to it. Ray, thank you so much for joining us in studio today. That's Ramboray, coach and GM for the Dallas Empire.